Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. If you're new to the podcast, welcome. Please leave us a review, like us, subscribe, and let us know what you want us to talk about. Just email me, Michael at businessforunicorns.com. Today, I'm here with Pete Dupuy. What's up, my friend?
Hey, Michael. I'm excited to be here. I'm going to kick along some feedback to you. I've been getting more than once in the past week feedback that people like our new short form, consistently short form, digestible content. So these 15 to 20 minute quick hitters are well received from what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I'm so glad. I'm so glad. Really, we've been getting that feedback for a little while, and the only reason we didn't get to this format sooner was me. I was 100% the only barrier to doing shorter podcasts because I personally like long ones. I love a long, meandering, complicated, layered conversation. And turns out a lot of people don't. But once in a while, I'm still going to do some of those, but most of our content is going to be these short ones. And I think people really do like them because they can listen to them on the fly. They can listen to both every week now that we're doing two. So I can see that's 100% a win. And to be fair, I'm totally enjoying them. And once in a while, I'll probably spoil myself with like an hour-long conversation.
Well, if it's just for your own benefit, record all the long form ones you want and chop them up into a bunch of mini podcasts.
Yeah, we totally could do that as well, right? Just to make long ones and cut them. That's totally been suggested. I think the challenge for me is that when the value of a long conversation is having a bunch of things that get strung together over a while that are connected, and there's a value in it being one conversation. But this is me just nitpicking. But I'm so glad people are loving them. Listeners, thanks for listening. And we're going to keep doing the short ones. So I'm glad you like them. That's what we're doing, including today. We're going to do a short one today. And the short one today, we're going to do about a topic that Pete and I get asked about a lot. Mark gets asked this question a lot. Being in business partnerships, we often get asked questions about business partnerships. In particular, one question, and Pete's had some experience in this recently, we get asked all the time, how do you know when a really good employee should become a business partner? When do you think about giving someone bonus or profit sharing or even equity in the business? And what is that transition? What could it look like? What are the signs that that's the right thing to do? And that's what Pete's going to share today because he's been going through that process recently and he's learning in real time and agreed to share his learning with us. So Pete, kind of tee up what you've been going through.
Well, we have just officially, maybe not declared to the world just yet, but internally everyone around here knows that we have taken our longest tenured employee, John O'Neill, and turned him into now my second longest tenured business partner. And John has acquired a stake in our operation and is no longer my employee. He is my business partner. And so
can I ask this just before you dive in, just for like backstory, just briefest backstory? Can you just say a little bit about like, how long has John been with you? What has this journey to this moment been like for him, so we can kind of see some of the quote kind of warning signs or like, positive signs that led to this moment?
Absolutely. Well, John started in the summer of 2017 when we had a couple of sudden and unexpected defections from staff members who left to start a competing business. And we instantaneously needed to plug two holes. And John was the one person that we plugged into that space, because he had executed an internship in our Florida facility and had Eric's implicit trust just based on his performance in that setting. And we didn't want to make a hasty hire. So he wasn't hasty because we appreciate his track record, his work ethic, his cultural fit. He was in a facility that we were aware of and respected, and he was still in our network. So that didn't feel hasty, but we didn't have the next person teed up. And you could argue that we never hired the next person because John stepped in and did the job of two people and we never missed a beat. And so he was a very poorly paid hourly wage employee initially, who very quickly saw his own value to the operation and very intelligently came to Eric and myself and said, I deserve to be paid better. It's time to put me on a salary and let's get wheels in motion on that. So he went from hourly wage to healthy salary to another contract renewal that was a salary plus a revenue share. And then here we are at this new stage where my business partner, Eric, is officially transitioning to full-time in Florida. And this will be the last of their seasonal returns, the Cressy family, to Massachusetts to coach for anywhere from 3 to about 5 months of a year at a max. And they've sold their home. They are all in on Florida. He's still very much an influential piece of the puzzle here, but he's not going to be showing face as much as he used to. And part of the reason this is an interesting topic to me right now is because I didn't realize how much I felt I was on an island as an owner since 2014 when Eric went to Florida,
Mm-hmm.
until I suddenly had another owner in the room with me year round. And I'm learning
Mm.
that in the last like 2-3 weeks. So there was never a moment where I was like, come on, man, this stinks. This isn't fair. I need you here. I don't know. It was out of sight, out of mind. But now that I have a business partner in the room to help make big decisions, big financial implications and staffing implications, that isn't 1,500 miles away, it's refreshing. And it's been an interesting shift in mindset, because it's very strange to go from having somebody who is like an entry level employee to your equal. Kind of, it felt fast. I know
Yeah, it's
5
just a
years
few
is not
years.
fast in our industry,
Yeah, but still.
but I'll tell you this. I don't know when we started getting onto this topic what my intended takeaways were, but if you're somebody who's listening and you are in a influential role in an operation, but you don't hold equity, the best thing John did from the start was he acted like an owner. He acted as if he was in the role he wanted. He carried himself like he had that level of influence. And as a result, he got it. And it's kind of a version of that, like dress for the job you want, not the one you have type deal.
Yep.
And he just went out and made himself indispensable over and over and over, to a point where it was just an absolute no-brainer to give him a piece of the pie.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, and well, also thanks, John, for letting us talk about you on this podcast, if you're listening. But I think, it's fantastic as a roadmap to say, if you're an employee who wants the next job or wants equity at some place in the gym you're working in, dear listener, then you got to show up like you're ready for that job and prove over and over again that you're indispensable, and that you're worth investing in long term. I think that's huge. But on the flip side, I saw you all do a lot right, even in the description you shared in this podcast, which is you all took a real gradual approach to giving more and asking for more, right? Starting as as you said, a poorly paid hourly employee, to then have a salary and more responsibility and more money, to then have a version of profit share or rev share, whatever it was, and more responsibility and more money, to now having equity. I mean, that allows you along the way to stretch yourself as the owner, stretch the person as the employee, make sure that this dance you're doing of changing roles and responsibilities is working for both of you as you progress. So each stage allowed you to kind of check in with yourselves to make sure you're still moving in the right direction. I think that's also a best practice, because too often I see people, have a relationship with someone for only a few years, just be so desperately want to have another partner that they don't fully spend time to really get to know each other and really be in the trenches together. But you did that. So you could be in this moment and be really confident about this choice you both made.
Yes, he was fully vetted. That's for sure. And one of the interesting things that we did along the way, not right out of the gate, not in that first transition from hourly to salaried, but from salaried to more of a revenue share, like commission type based model, based on how the business performs, is I said to him, look, I don't really know how I want to attack this, because I haven't done this before, but we do know that we're going to kind of treat you like a business partner, in the sense that we're going to fully open the books. We're going to open them up, full transparency on how this place moves and what we can do financially. And I don't remember if it was him or me. He seems to be smarter than me, so it's probably John. One of us said, you know what, how about John lay out a couple of different proposed scenarios? Yep. And we consider a bunch of options. And so John left it was probably a weekend, because he loves to go home and live in spreadsheets. He's one of those people who's like, can't get enough of a spreadsheet. And he came back and he hit me with a low, a medium, and a high risk scenario. So the low risk being, Well, from his perspective, high salary, lower upside on the commission. And then the high risk scenario for him being like, hey, chop my salary down from where it currently is, but give me big upside based on how the business
Mm-hmm.
performs. And ultimately, that's where we settled. I said, do you trust me? Yeah. Well, I trust you, and I have a vision for where we're going to go here. Um, let's bet on your upside, and let's, if we have to course correct, we can. But basically, I let him paint the picture of 3 different scenarios he would be entirely comfortable with, and we chose the one that kind of enticed us both to chase a little bit harder because it was a win-win for us. And that was a cool experience because it was the first time in a couple of years I was able to think a little bit bigger about the potential of our operation. Because look, having Eric in here for a couple months of the year has been great, but those months have been decreasingly productive from a strategy and brainstorming standpoint, because over those years we've added multiple children.
Sure.
We have added multiple alternative revenue streams. Eric is a employee of the New York Yankees. I am a independent contractor with Business for Unicorns. It's like we have a lot of competing demands. So it's just become increasingly difficult to sit down and think like pie in the sky, big ambitious goals. And now I'm in John's presence 5 days a week, 50-ish weeks a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm back to doing stuff that Eric and I used to do constantly. I mean, in our early days, we'd train together 4, sometimes 5 days a week. There was a brief period where we were living in essentially the same building and commuting to and from work together multiple days a week. And the creative dynamics of that were such that it allowed us to scale really quickly and see these like year over year over year of double-digit growth. But then we turned into adults living in different states for most of the year. And that disappeared. And I didn't know how much I missed it until I found a new kind of partner in crime to sit in the room with me and do it.
Quick interruption from your old pal Mark to tell you about an awesome free resource for gym owners. Have you ever found yourself overwhelmed because you're not exactly sure where to put your efforts to improve your training gym? Well, you're not alone, and that's why we created this awesome resource. At gymownerreportcard.com, you can access a totally free assessment that will help you identify exactly where to focus your efforts so you can get crystal clear on the next steps to create the gym of your dreams. Head to gymownerreportcard.com. And now back to the show.
Yeah, that's
if
amazing.
That makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think that'll resonate with a lot of people listening who have partnerships. I would love to actually dive into this idea with our remaining time of talking about, if what we want from people to kind of demonstrate to us that they're ready for being a partner in the business is to start kind of acting like an owner. I love just kind of unpack that a little bit more. What are some things that you saw John doing, or you would see any employee doing, that tell you that they're starting to act, they're capable of acting like an owner? What does it actually look like? What are the behaviors that you think really display a sense of like, I have the wherewithal to take ownership of this business in a meaningful way? Like, walk me through that.
I think it starts with you, the manager, first. You need to demonstrate a willingness to empower that person.
Sure.
And so I think John probably got to a point where he was sick of me saying, I don't care, I trust you. And I did a ton of that. If he'd come to say, can I get your approval on this staff schedule I just mapped out? Say, I don't care, I trust you. Who loses if you mess up this staff schedule? Well, you do, John. You're the one who's got the team frustrated or burnt out or tired. You stand to lose more in this circumstance than I do, because the trickle-down effect, it'll eventually get to me. But for now, you're empowered to make these calls. And so it's kind of like a act now, ask for my forgiveness later approach to management that I gave him the keys to.
Yep.
And once he realized I was serious, I think initially it was kind of like, what's the catch? I haven't had a manager who has given me the keys like that. And if I'm being honest, I think I was just frustrated and tired in that stage in my business when we were suddenly competing with former employees, and we were on kind of the battleground of the competitive business landscape.
Sure.
I got tired, annoyed, and what now kind of can be positioned as a great leadership move was a apathetic
Sure.
couple of moments where I was like, you know what? I'm just tired. I trust you. Please figure it out.
Yeah.
And it played okay for me. And I'll take credit for that because Eric and I did a lot of work vetting him before we made that. We decided to say things like that to a colleague or an employee at the time. But the best thing I can tell you, if you're asking yourself, like, is this person really ready for this? Well, you're not going to know until you let them try. Yeah. And so you got to loosen the reins on the micromanagement habits and maybe not go so far that you come across as apathetic. But I came out of it. It took a little while.
But there's something to be said about, like, giving them autonomy and seeing how they handle it. Because for a lot of folks who maybe ownership and leadership is not the right move for them, autonomy can feel real scary. And I've seen a lot of people that we've tried to give autonomy to just freeze or just spiral, right? I'm like, hey, you have carte blanche. Run this program, like, make it what you want, make it better. I've seen some people, like, really not be comfortable with that level of freedom. Right. And that's not the behavior I'm looking for in someone who I'm going to give equity to. I want someone who in that level of freedom still can stay grounded, still can stay focused, can continue to communicate well. So whether that came out of, your apathy at the moment or not, I think that that's still a great takeaway for our listeners, right? Which is, you want to see what your staff are made of in terms of their leadership and ownership capabilities. Give them some freedom. Give them some space to show you what they're capable of when you're not managing them every second, and see what happens in your absence, right? That's actually super valuable. So I think regardless of the impulse at the time, I think it's still a really good takeaway.
Well, and I want to make sure that people understand that if somebody presents in a way that they're a little bit deer in headlights when given that autonomy, it doesn't mean they'll never be ready. It just means they're not ready yet.
Yeah.
And so don't quit on someone the first time you throw that at them, because I hate to say it, but shitty management is more the rule than the exception in my experience. And a lot of people do feel a little bit off balance when they run into somebody who's really willing to take a risk on them. And by take a risk, I mean, let them feel the autonomy of making decisions on their behalf. Kind of spend, when I said that, I said, you go spend my money. Yeah. I trust you, is kind of where my head was at.
And being okay with them not doing it well, right? Being okay with it maybe going poorly, and also seeing how they learn from that. So you're absolutely right. I think someone freezing or not doing well at first is not the end of the conversation, right? But it's just part of the data you're gathering about, okay, well, can they get better? Are they going to learn from the fact that these first 2 weeks were really bad for them or from that mistake that they made, right? And that's part of it, because we both continue to make lots of mistakes on a regular basis. And so, can they too learn and adapt, I think, is crucial. Sorry, keep going. You were going to say something more.
Well, I like to give people permission to fail. Yeah. When we roll out new initiatives, John and I, one of the things we're doing right now is overhauling our comp structure, trying to figure out how we can incentivize our most valued team members to chase a little harder and think a little more like entrepreneurs. And our first stab at this has just been introduced. And I said to the room as we're about 2/3 of the way through, I was like, guys, here's the deal, though. I need to tell you right now that we might swing and miss here. I might have drastically overshot it and might need to course correct. And this is a trial run. Or I might have undershot it, and it doesn't mean I was trying to screw you. It means we're going to work as we go here. But it's the same thing when you give somebody power, like we're talking about what we did with John early on. We'd say to him, hey, the kind of reins have been loosened a little bit. I want you to make some significant decisions, and I want you to stop coming here and asking me for my blessing on all of them. The answer is yes to all of the above, but there's a chance you're going to screw some of this up, and I'm going to handle myself like an adult when you do, and we're going to talk through what went wrong, and we're going to discuss how we'll do it differently next time. But you have my blessing to make a mistake. Yeah. And I don't know that I've ever had any managers say that to me in my brief period of employability. I like to joke with you and Fisher that the three of us are collectively completely unemployable at this point. Yes. But I did have a few managers over the course of my career, and I can't answer the question, who is the best manager you've ever had? And that makes me sad, because they all sucked.
Yeah. Well, I think, I'll speak for myself with that. I've had a handful of managers tell me that it was okay to make mistakes. But then when I did, it did not feel okay. in our conversations afterwards. So I think that's another thing I'll throw in the mix. It's like, it's not just enough to say it's all right. You have to actually demonstrate to them through your words and your behavior when the mistake happens that it's still okay. Not that you can't be upset, right? Not that you can't be rattled for a little bit, but at the end of the day, you gave them the autonomy to fail, right? You have to be okay with them picking up their own mess, learning from their mistake, and trying again, because that's the learning, is in the repetition. So I think there's so many great takeaways from this conversation, even for listeners who are not right now actively trying to turn an employee into a partner. I think that this conversation eliminates a bunch of, I think, great tips for just developing people, right? Which is being okay with failure, slowly incentivizing their role by giving a little more responsibility, a little more money, incentivizing them by having some of their incentives be based on performance with bonuses, commissions, revenue, or profit share. Like, I think all of those are strategies that everyone listening can use right now, regardless if that person's on a path to equity or not.
Can I plug a shameless kind of sales pitch here that just makes so much sense in this moment?
Yeah.
And this is assuming that we are welcoming non-Unicorn Society members to our September retreat, because I know that we've done this in the past, and I don't know if you've budgeted room for it.
Yeah,
but if we are,
actually, email went out there. I think there was a few spots available. Yeah.
Okay. Well, since we are, is what I'll say. John is our guest lecturer, or one of two, alongside Lisa Lewis. And John's giving a lecture, I believe it's called Managing Up, Lessons from an Employee Turned Owner. And he is going to do between 35 and 45 minutes on basically how he manipulated me and Eric for over the last 5 years and got to this point where he basically acted like an owner. And he managed the two of us, two, I would say, somewhat imposing personalities when you're the low man on the totem pole staff member, to go from there to telling us how we should do our job in a 5-year span and having us taking notes and saying thank you is a pretty significant kind of accomplishment as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. And he's going to walk us through it. I'm going to be the one sitting at the front of the room, just learning how I've been mentally worked for the last couple of years. But if nothing else, come out to the retreat just to watch that, because I think it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening to my friends and you want to come to the retreat in Boston in September, just shoot me an email and if there's still spots available. By the time this podcast comes out, there might not be, but just email me, Michael at businessunicorns.com, and just put in the subject, Boston retreat ? And I'll let you know if we got spots for you still. But thanks for doing this, Pete. I think it was a great example of you kind of learning in real time, being willing to share that with all of us. So thank you for being so generous. Any final words before we wrap things up?
I think we should come back to it in 6 months. Come on the other side of my busy season, when I've gone through the trials and tribulations of kind of staffing up a little bit seasonally and making some financial decisions at the end of Q4 and doing my first round of new business partner distributions. There's still so many lessons ahead for me, and there's probably stuff we did terribly wrong and some things that we stumbled into with good decision making unintentionally. But this isn't a subject that just dies here. I mean, like you said, I'm learning as I go. Yeah.
Well said, my friend. Well, listeners, you've got our promise that we will circle back at some point when Pete has some other lessons learned solidified we can share with all of you. But thanks for being so open and transparent today, my friend. As always, it was a real blast. Listeners, if you like this podcast, please give it a share. Go review us, please. Reviews help us find more people just like you. And again, shoot me an email or Pete an email if you want to tell us topics you want us to cover. Pete at businessunicorns.com, Michael at businessunicorns.com, and we'll see you on the next one.
Yeah, I got to head into the gym and let John know I've outed him as an owner. I got some communicating to do. Talk soon.
Hello, fitness business nerds. Listen, I know that you are interested in running a successful training gym. If not, you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. And lucky for you, our friends over at Kilo make running a successful gym easier than ever. Basically, Kilo is an all-in-one platform that helps you get more leads, helps you sell more memberships, and helps you keep those members longer. Sounds magical, right? I mean, here's how it works. First, they build you a fancy new website very quickly. Then they give you marketing software with kind of done for you content that lets you email and text leads, lets you manage all your contacts, and lets you book appointments. Finally, you get a gym management system where you can manage all your classes, collect payments, and track your key metrics all in one place. And if you get tripped up, Kilo is there for you with kind of a 7 days a week customer service. I mean, you can't find that on platforms these days. It's incredible. So to learn more, go to usekilo.com. Tell them me and Mark sent you, and they'll basically waive the $1,000 setup fee. You can't beat that, my friends. Go do it now. It's usekilo.com, usekilo.com. Tell them we sent you.